Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I'm here with Celestrina, which means blue butterfly, a little blue butterfly. And Celestrina and I know each other from Damanhur Community, and she's a video maker. She has her own YouTube channel about intentional community living, as well as spirituality. And today I'm here in Damanhur, and I thought I would love to have Celestrina on the podcast. She actually recently started her own podcast before she became pregnant again, but she's going to pick it up again soon. And her daughter is here with us as well. So if you hear her throughout the podcast, we're really in community life and what it's like to be in the day in and day out. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about the mirroring of relationships and its power to really catapult our spiritual path and really our ascension, transformation, our ability to come into deeper compassion and love. And we're going to be sharing about some of our experiences in community and also just in relationships in general. So welcome, Celestrina. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And if there's any way you want to introduce yourself or share a bit more about your path, your journey, even your videography making and all the different things that you do to share your message with the world that you're living every day in community life.
Well, actually, it weaves together very beautifully because my path, it started, I think, around like 10 years ago now. And no, more than 10 years ago, at least 13 years ago, with a spiritual awakening. And so I was not into spirituality at all. And then I had this boom spiritual awakening now. Then I learned, I don't know how to call it, the Kundalini awakening, but practically it catapulted me into an identity crisis. And I ended up traveling around the world to try to find a kind of truth. So from the deep jungles of the Amazon to the Himalayas and meditation retreats. And then that's where the point came where I felt that I arrived to a certain point where I realized, okay, but what can I create to really make the world a better place? Because in the end, yes, I can try to reach my own enlightenment, but in the end, I realized also that we are all in the boat together. And so it doesn't really matter if I only do the work by myself, but I really wanted to make an impact. And that is when I became interested in community. And I arrived to Damanhur because, of course, having had a spiritual awakening, I was not interested in something that was only about, eco-village, even though I think that is a part of a holistic concept. But I really wanted something that had a kind of spiritual depth. And I came to Damanhur and I signed up for a 3-month trying to be citizen program. And after that, I decided to stay, not because I was like, wow, this is my place. I was actually in the beginning, my mind was like, oh, but I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to do this. There's so many. So I had the sense of like surrendering to something or leaving something when choosing something, which is something very important. Like when you choose something, you always feel that you give up something else. And that was something in my mind. I'm an Aquarius Sagittarius rising. So I really, a lot of new experiences, travel and so on. But it really allowed me also to understand that it's only when you dig some roots, like that you can really branch out and become, the tree. And so when I decided to stay, I really listened to my heart. And that is when also in the mirroring process, I was 20 years old and I had, of course, no work experience. I hadn't studied because I thought that the system was corrupt. So I didn't want to study in the university, which I then later did. And I realized that it didn't serve me at all. But anyways, and it was here when I came here, I did a stupid little project with videos And people, they said that you're really good at doing videos. And that is when I started helping out in the community with videos that allowed me to start on a path of becoming a video maker. So that was already in and of itself a way of how other people can mirror your talents that you are not even aware of, and how that can empower you to grow. And so everything is a little bit weaved together.
Yeah, beautiful. And so I also did the similar 3-month program to live here. And I think I was a year behind you.
Yes.
Celestina came a year before me, and it was fascinating to see how, both in terms of mirroring, in terms of triggering, but mirroring in terms of helping your wings spread. I remember I once got this feedback from, I can't remember her name. She lives in the house connected to the temple. And she was like, wow, you clean so well. Like, because I was cleaning the temple.
That's a great tip.
And she was like, yeah, exactly. And she was just like, I was watching you in the video and I just see how you clean everything. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, I never thought of myself as a good cleaner. If anything, I would hire help, you know? And so it is beautiful. And that's like maybe the first lesson we want to bring forth. Both, what are you projecting onto the people you love? How are you seeing them? How are you complimenting them? What are the skills that you're bringing your awareness, your attention, which is like sunlight and water, when you're sharing gratitude or acknowledgement for your beloveds, your family, your friends, people you work with, or if you do live in community, or you have just community in your life, how are you mirroring what you want to see flourish in them? Mm-hmm. Because we have that power, and that's actually a power as a healer. So as a healer, my job is to see the highest timeline of the person I'm working with, or to see them in their highest potential, fully healed, fully whole, fully awakened, fully realized. And that gives them power. And then also the responsibility of that on the flip side. Yeah. When we say words that could hurt another, or we're not kind, or we, instead of complimenting, we somehow give a negative comment, that can do the same. And actually yesterday, Jason and I, with my beloved, we were reading this book, Getting the Love You Want. And it talks about how there's these hidden parts of ourselves, or lost parts, that when we were a child, someone told us like, oh, you're not good at that. You're not as smart, or you're not a good singer. And one time my sister and my mom told me like, you don't sing well, or something like this in the car. And I've always been like, meanwhile, I channel light language, and I've made a song that's a light language song, but I know that there's times where I feel shy or embarrassed, or like, oh, I can't sing in front of all these people. Sure, I could do it one-to-one or in a course, but feeling still that I guess it's an embarrassment or a shrinking of my energy around something that someone projected onto me. And that's part of our path, our healing, our return to wholeness, is that clearing of all the projections and all the ways that we shrunk or diminished in some way in the eyes or the mirror of another.
I think that's very interesting. Also, in the sense of something that I recently understood with living in community, is trying to master your personal energy, which is essential, I think, everywhere in the world, but especially when you're in contact constantly with people. It's very important to know what you want to give your energy to. So it's very interesting when looking at how to master our personal energy in contact with other people, and to really find that balance in between trying to give a good feedback, trying to have a good communication. But when you see that on the other side, people haven't done their work yet, not trying to push too much onto them, but really accepting and allowing them how they are, but at the same time really protecting your energy, and how to do that in a way that is respectful of the other and respectful of yourself. So really, I think in community especially, but I think this is universal in your work, in your organization, with your friends, with your family often, how to find the boundaries of the respect that you can give to others, but also the respect that you give to yourself in putting those boundaries up, which is something that I struggled a lot with when I came to community, because also with cultural differences, with ways in how you interact with people, there's an intentional and international community that is a huge thing. But really recently, I decided to see that, okay, but if certain people are not available yet, that is also their journey, and I respect that. But how can I put my boundaries and not be affected by that, still being in a loving present, which is
That's the work.
Yes, that's the work, really. That's the work. And that's really how you can start master your own energy and really feel that you are whole and integrated and still can give, because you're not losing. So you're not constantly losing energies to what we can call energy vampires, or even just unconscious people who have unconscious patterns. But you're whole, you keep your energy, and you can give the energy, but you still have it for yourself. So that is something that I learned a lot, and that was very, very good for a people pleaser, for example, that many Swedish people, which is my cultural heritage, is very in the culture to really be a people pleaser and to be in service of others, but not of yourself. And to find that balance is crucial.
Yeah, and I feel like in the bonus section, that's a great thing that we'll elaborate on, is the how to create those boundaries.
Yeah.
How to show up as the loving presence while still honoring your energy and the others. And so definitely tune into the bonus for that. And in terms of what you're saying around when we're people pleasing, like this is a universal thing. It's not just a Swedish thing. And sometimes I recently had a conversation about this, where sometimes people are not sure what people pleasing even is. People pleasing is when you do something, but you don't really want to do it, but you're doing it for another because you want to make them feel comfortable. So essentially, it's when you put others before yourself. And this is not serving. Sometimes people think that's a good way to be in relationship, because it's like, oh, but look, I'm sacrificing, or, oh, look, now it can be a better dynamic. But the truth is, the energy with which we do anything taints and fills whatever the action is, whatever the words are, whatever the situation or dynamic or exchange is. And if you're not coming with this wholehearted enthusiasm, then I feel that it's not serving, because that's felt. Whereas, can you take time, whether it's to be selfish, and if you're watching the video, I'm putting quotations, where you just fill up to be in love, feel connected, feel really good, that then you can go and give from a place of devotion, of like, I actually don't even need anything from this person or from this situation or from these people, but I'm just going to shine my light. I feel called to connect in this moment. But if you don't feel called to connect, maybe it serves the relationship, the community, your workspace, to take however much time you need to just care for yourself and come back to a heart-centered place. So then you don't show up in a people-pleasing energy. You really honor, like, what do I really need to then show up as my highest self for this relationship? And I find that that can make all the difference, because also what I've noticed, I remember being in community, I'm not going to mention names, obviously. And I remember at the time I didn't have a car, and I was waiting, and I've shared this actually in other podcast episodes, or I think in one of my relationship courses, where this one woman was often quite nasty to me. And I was just like, I don't know what I've ever done. Like, I feel like she's always mean to me. And it was time, and I was waiting for a ride to go to the main center of the community. And she was the person who came out that morning, and she was like huffing and puffing. And I was really full that morning. And instead of responding or reacting, I just found a space in my heart that was like, wow, she must really be going through a hard time, because I just can't understand any other way. And so I just had compassion for her. And in holding that space versus any kind of victim energy versus any kind of meeting her energy, I was just like, wow, she must be going through a hard time. Then we were in the car. She apologized to me. She said, I'm so sorry. And then she really started telling me about the hard time that she's going through. Mm-hmm. And that came from, because that morning I filled myself up, whether I meditated, I can't remember what I did, but I was in a good place. So it didn't even matter what other people were doing or how other people were reacting. And I feel like that circles back to what Celestina was saying, which is, I feel like in community or in any kind of relationship, if someone's not available and they're not ready for feedback, or someone who's triggered or not in a good place usually is not ready to have a conscious conversation. So the best thing we can be in that moment is the love and compassion. And that is the work of being spiritual. It's not like, can you meditate 20 hours or do all the yoga positions? It's like, can you be loving compassion no matter the situation?
Yeah, really. And that is really also how you keep your energy. Like that's really how you don't lose your energy being in that and not being affected by that. And sadly, people sometimes are really going through hard times, even hard lives, and have conditionings through their life in which they have this kind of mindset that doesn't allow them to do the work or to really grow. And that is okay too. You find those people too in community. This is something that even in spiritual communities, where of course the norm is that people do work on themselves, but there's always different levels of where people want to go and don't want to go. There's still an everyday life, and that is also something that I think is important to accept when you approach any kind of spiritual organization, any kind of spiritual group or community, that everyone is like a fraction of humanity. Within every group there's a fraction of humanity, so you will find the ones you feel like, wow, super unconscious, and you will find the ones where you really feel inspired because of how far they've gone. And this is something that is important also for I think, the way that our expectations when we go into any kind of spiritual group, that it's important to see and to love and to not project onto others or expect from others, but to look at where you are at, because as you said, depending on where you're at, the situation completely changes anyways. So you are really a reflection of the world that you're seeing.
Absolutely. And they've said that about like Buddha, like people would come and curse at Buddha and he would just be love. And I think there was this one story too about this man who went to Buddha and he was like, he had like a negative judgment of him, and he came home and he said all these negative things, but then Buddha was just like, I love you. Like it only saying nice things about the man. And so it's this idea of like, yes, everything is a reflection really just of you. Like every single relation. That's why sometimes you catch yourself in a repeating pattern of like, wait a minute, this seems really familiar, but this is a different person. And so the relationships are just a intelligent construct that support us in learning more about ourselves, evolving ourselves. And sometimes it's like not even about the other person. They're just coming into our lives as a role. And so even if we have a soul contract with someone, it's like, how do you know that in some other place when your karmic contracts are being created, that you aren't like, hey, in this life, I'm going to need you to come in, like break my heart or like really trigger me at that moment in my life so then I could change my life. I could decide something different. I could choose to respond in another way or do the deep healing work that I know that I'm meant to be to really become my ultimate self. And so every relationship serves a beautiful, beautiful function. And one more thing, actually. So I love Orango, who is like the head of our meditation school here. And to me, he's like always joy. He's always in good spirits. Like and for my experiences, he walks into a room and I feel like he uplifts the energy no matter what, which would make sense why he's one of the leaders of the spiritual community here, is because he has done some mastery around that work. And so I feel like there's certain times where I'm like, okay, these are people I admire because I really can see how their energy changes and shifts other people into a positive space. And the strongest energy always wins. So I also think like that's the goal of our spirituality. Can you be the strongest energy of joy, love, compassion, whatever it is that's going to leave other people better than when you arrived? Like you leave and they're better.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I really think that too, what you said within relationships, the importance of that when you are in a relationship and knowing that the relationship serves you, and again, connecting back to the people pleaser, that does not mean, because sometimes people are like allowing themselves to be treated badly because they say, what will this teach me? Sometimes it needs to teach you to walk away. It needs, very often in this situation, you need to be taught to stand in your own power and put your own boundaries up. And that is the teaching, to love yourself. Because in the end, the way that we love ourselves, as we have said, is the way that you can love others, because everything is a projection of your own self-esteem, of your own self-love. And that is how then that energy then becomes available to others. Otherwise, we are only trying to get that from others, and that is felt. And that oftentimes creates triggers, that creates tensions, and you see this daily in a community. Whenever you're not in that space, you have triggers. Whenever you're in a space of your own self-love and your own wholeness, as you said that morning with this woman, I have this constantly of seeing, okay, but then the days are always good. The impact that you can have on other people is always more positive than when you leave, and you go to bed with a lot of energy. So this is really something that the work is done in the everyday life, and how the other people are really mirror of where you are at in your spiritual journey, from community to relationships to anything.
Yeah, and I feel like this ties into like part of when you want to have ultimate relationships, and I feel that everyone wants connection and everyone wants relationships. Maybe not everyone wants to live in community, and that's fine. But I do find that to have the human experience, it is a relational experience. So to think like, oh, I'm just going, and I know because I have a strong hermit energy, but to think like, oh, I'm so enlightened. I remember when I lived in Malibu and I like hadn't been in a relationship for 2 years, and it was a time where I wasn't living full time in Damanhur anymore. And so, but I was going back and forth, and I just remember thinking like, oh, like I wonder if I would even get triggered anymore. Like, and I couldn't get to that next level of my development without relationship. And so then when I entered into a relationship, I accessed a whole bunch of other things that I couldn't on my own. And I'm sharing this because I want you to have compassion for yourself and not to think like something is wrong. And if you're watching the video, I'm saying wrong in quotation, is if you get triggered in a relationship, or if something comes up and then you're not your highest self, or you're not ultimate compassion, ultimate love, because you're now in a new relational dynamic. I actually find that if you are on an ascension path and an evolution path, the new relationships that come into your life may very well trigger you, but they could trigger you into excellence. They could unearth aspects of yourself that now want to be looked at. And we're never going to be given something we can't handle. So a relationship will, in my opinion, always serve us. And yes, there is a time where it expires. Sometimes you just feel complete, or you both just go separate ways, even if it's a friendship where you just don't feel called to call each other or hang out, and that's okay. And some relationships you'll have for a long time. But I really invite you that every time a new relationship or a new seeming conflict or trigger arises, to really look within and see like, how is this serving my greatest becoming? Or is it that I have to communicate boundaries? Or is it really, am I serving a role for that person? Sometimes it's not only about us too, like we're serving as catalysts in other people's lives.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, it would be wonderful if we lived in this ideal world where like everyone did their trauma work and everyone did their personal healing and development work, but that's not necessarily the case. And that is the beauty of why we're seeing more and more spiritual and conscious communities popping up, because people do see the value of relationships for awakening and transformation. And also because we want to be in spaces with like-minded people, because if you all have those tools, and you can be diverse and different, like Celestrina's from Sweden and I'm from America, and we're very different, and we've even had different spiritual paths that have now crossed in this community space. But I always find an easiness when I'm interfacing with her, just because she's done that work inside. And just like them, there's people in community that are also of a completely different country background, maybe never even did the work and could even be 20 or 40 years older than us. And maybe there is a little more, it's not as easy, but we can still hold that loving space and be present and maybe even laugh about it.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. I think that is that also one of the number key, to laugh about it in community, and to laugh about ourselves when we are not able to go into that loving space, because sometimes even it's easy, as you said, it's very easy with people that you feel that there is a resonance with, because both has done the work. So you see those people and you recognize them. You say, okay, this is a place where I can rest. almost, and where our energies can build up together. And then there are other places in which there's no rest, but this serves another purpose, really, to trigger you, or to really allow you to see certain things and patterns within yourself. So there's no resting. And in those moments, if you're not able to stay conscious, because it's much easier when there's a resonance, also to be able to laugh about yourself and to really see those moments as the most important moments for you to grow. And this in community and in any kind of relationship. Of course, I think that the partnership relationship is one of the most important ones, like a romantic relationship, but also parent-child relationship, all those that are very, very intimate, very, very intimate, where you really touch each other in those moments. Then when you're not able to be your highest full self, to be able to see that and to apologize and to laugh about that and to take another step forward the next time, that is the most enlightened moments, really. And it really comes from, yes, you can do the work in meditations, but if you don't apply that to your everyday life, if you don't become what you are practicing, then there's no use for it. And this is why relationships are so important, to see where we are in our spiritual path.
Absolutely. And one way to make light, actually, my spiritual godmother here in Damanhur, I want to see if I'll get her on the podcast too. She always would, in order to make light of the moments that were challenging, especially when I was here in community, we decided to create a way of talking about things. So it wasn't like we were like ruminating in the negative energy of it. We decided to call it, instead of saying like, how are you doing? You're like, oh, this and that, and complaining, we would say, I'm in the gym, like la palestra, because
Yes.
here a lot of people speak Italian. So the idea is that we're in this type of formation that's happening through the dynamics. And instead of seeing it as like, oh, poor me, I'm a victim, everyone is triggering me, or I'm triggered by them, and somehow placing the blame outside of ourselves, I was like, hey, I'm in the gym. This is what's present this week or this month. And I also think for women, when we PMS, it's actually real that we do feel things on a whole other level, and we have a shorter fuse for patience, and certain things might annoy us more. And it's just that returning to compassion. And I really believe like tracking our cycle really helps, of like, okay, I'm kind of reacting stronger than usual. This really probably isn't as big of a deal as I'm making it. Where am I in my cycle? Oh, okay. I'm going to bleed in a few days. So this makes sense. That has been a huge help for me, because I know that week before, all of my relationships, well, especially my romantic one, it's like, you're eating in a way that's triggering me.
Yes.
And so just having that compassion, and also inviting other people to, they can track your cycle with you. So if you do live at a home with other people, I think it's a great idea for women to track each other's cycle, and the men to also be aware, because we are more sensitive. So it's having compassion for someone who's in that time as well.
Yeah, I understand that truly, especially now with pregnancy, with the second pregnancy, that is a constant.
It's like you're always on PMS, right?
Yes, practically. Well, there's the good moments, but there's also the very bad ones also. The ones where you get triggered very easily, very, very easily. And you feel that the whole world is just like dropping, and you cannot sustain it anymore. Then you need to have people around you to help you sustain. And that is also beautiful with a partnership, or with family, or with community, people who see you, and to be able to say, okay, I can take on something for you. Or even with my daughter now, who turns 4, the fact that she is able to understand that there is another growing being within me, and that she needs to be humble, she needs to be nice with me. This has also been something that has been growing a lot during this pregnancy, and to see the awareness that comes from a little girl, from a little child, in that space with a mother. It's very beautiful also how each relationship teaches you different things.
So beautiful. Yeah. And this question is coming up. It's kind of like a provocative question of what was the situation that was like your hardest relational dynamic here in community, or just in your life in general? Like I kind of shared that time that I had. And
maybe where you were able to find the compassion, or where you weren't. You just found it to be really hard, but what you learned from that experience.
I think that one of the most powerful experiences, this was many years ago, was a situation with another community member in which I was fascinated by this person. And I was very much in a situation of people pleasing, in the sense that I wanted a relationship with this person. And I was completely neglecting the fact of this person not treating me equally as well. And so I think that when we are in situations with people that we admire in certain sense, if they are unavailable or are not as open to the relationship, and perhaps even treating you in it, but they're not direct with it, then that can be very confusing if you're unaware. And especially for me, who had the tendencies of people pleasing and very naturally becoming very enthusiastic and happy with other people, I drained my energy in that situation, and it left me very depleted. And at a certain moment, I had this big spin within my whole being that was a spin that took myself from like my spiritual evolution. It leaped after this realization that I couldn't put cushions and defend people who were actually not treating me well, even though I admired them. And when I decided to love myself and give myself the love that I didn't feel that I received in that relationship, even though it was not a romantic relationship, it was just a relationship with another person that I wanted a relationship that I admired. But when I decided that I was going to be the one that I was going to pour that energy onto, and I was not going to accept someone not treating me with the dignity that I think that I was worthy of, something clicked and my whole life completely changed. And I think that that energy change of saying, okay, yeah, but I am worthy, and I'm only going to be interacting with people who are treating me with the same kind of worth that I would treat myself and others with. And that is that kind of boundary, that kind of self-love, that kind of strength completely shifted my life. And I would never have had that experience if that, or that, let's say, enlightened moment that completely changed my life, if I didn't have that kind of also painful situation and experience, and that I couldn't run from, and really needed to sit with myself and take my own responsibility in that relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I feel like that's leading us into the bonus. But before we do go there, I want you to share how people could connect with you. I know you have maybe a few Instagram accounts or wherever you feel most alive, or your YouTube channel, etc. And we'll also share the links.
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Celestina Rebecca. Rebecca is my name before the community. Celestina is the blue butterfly name that I took when I came here. And you can find it on YouTube. From there, you can also find my podcast, Reborn to Live, and my Instagram account with the same name, Celestina Rebecca.
Beautiful. And so thank you all for tuning in today. I trust that our episode will be supportive for any relationship that you're in, whether it's relational challenges or just you're wanting your relationships to go to the next level. And you can receive more inside the bonus content. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.